Hi everyone, welcome back to World City Studios. This update video was a long time coming. I knew I wanted to do one following the completion of Operation Safari. Now that that is complete and that's come to fruition and you all have seen it, now we're here. There's a lot I'd like to cover in this video, and I'm going to try and split this video into three primary subjects. The first one, I'm going to be talking a little bit about Operation Safari. The second part, I am hoping to address plans for the foreseeable long-term future of this channel. And the third part, which most of you are probably interested in, has to do with immediate plans with this channel. I'm going to try and make these sections accessible to you for those who are interested in skipping around, because I know I've got a lot to cover, and I'm going to try to go through it as quickly as I can. So Operation Safari is the most recent film that I have completed. If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend checking it out. It's very action-oriented, and it's probably the most action-oriented film that I've done since Munilist 10, which is what I would consider the last real featured brick film that I've done. I don't count Retro Squad for a number of reasons. One of them is that it just retells the story of Separatists' attack, which is my first ever LEGO stop motion. Among the reasons that it was more of like an anniversary animation. But Munilist 10 was the last real one that I'd say I had done. I covered this in my last update video about how that was sort of the beginning of the end in terms of having fun with these types of movies. It became so technical. And I think that this can be said about a lot of animators who either quit or go on hiatus from YouTube. When these films become too technical and they're no longer fun to make, we just don't make them anymore. And Munilist 10 was sort of the last one that I could really complete, because while it wasn't necessarily the most fun making, it was still satisfying enough to see the finished project. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to have that luxury with the next film, and that is, as I've also addressed, Imperial 501st, which I filmed back in 2018 as well. That has yet to see the light of day, and that was the one that really killed me, because that one was so technical, and to me, I didn't see a redeeming quality in trying to finish it to make it worthwhile. And, you know, with time passing as college continued to pick up and got busier, it was going to be hard to ever return to YouTube, especially with all these other unfinished projects like comedy shorts and other footage that I just had lying around, like Cop 1 the Third. I think this can be said universally for most subjects, is that when you have all of these mounting unfinished projects, the initiative to try to start something new and to try and finish that next one is really hard to do, because it's very discouraging to believe that you can still finish something. Operation Safari was the movie where I felt that if I could get this done, maybe I could return. And when the pandemic hit in 2020, you know, that was among one of the many elements that sort of kept me busy, but it also freed up time for me while I was at university. And so it was on the recommendation of my brother Pixel, who told me, well, maybe you should go back to animations because you have time to do it. And upon taking his advice, that's when I decided to film the fourth Clone Squad 6 film, which is what you all probably saw a couple of weeks ago. But I knew that I wanted to do Clone Squad 6 for quite some time. I know following Capital Strike, I was ready to sort of move on to Cop 1. And then a friend of mine gave me his Siege Battalion Trooper. And then another friend of mine, he gave me 3 more Siege Battalion Troopers. And Clone Squad 6, there were a couple things with the original trilogy that I felt like was missing. One of them was the fact that Commander Volts is the only green clone, Sarge is the only one who has the green Swamp Trooper helmet, and their squad was made of pilots and recon troopers. And I felt that it would be nice to show Clone Squad 6 in its glory when they have the actual green clones present. On top of that, Clone Squad 6-3 was one movie that I regret how it ended and how it fed right into Capital Strike, because it doesn't make it a very good independent film. It's sort of dependent on Capital Strike to sort of be conclusive. So the attempt to do Operation Safari was coming back to filming 2 years after Munilist 10, was to get back into the practice of filming. That's why it's very action-oriented. There's a lot of tricks I've used and techniques that I've used in the past. I wanted to show new minifigures that I hadn't before. I wanted to give Clone Squad 6 its own standalone adventure, and obviously it's a prequel to their original trilogy because they're still fighting CIS droids. Gree shows up, Bo shows up, the 501st clones are there, the ones that I never got to show in Imperial 501st. So Operation Safari was my attempt to just do one good movie. And when I filmed it in 2020, my hope was to release that the same year I shot it. I was hoping that was going to be my return to YouTube and to sort of get back into things. And things didn't work out that way, obviously, because I only released the movie like a little more than a week ago. What happened was Retro Squad was the last film that I edited on my old computer, and my new computer did not come with the programs or the setup that I was so accustomed to. And, you know, even trying to get this one film done, although I had time, I didn't have that much time to really configure that editing setup, and as soon as I tried to, college once again kicked into gear and I went back to campus. You know, it goes without saying that I've been very busy over the last couple of years, but I always had the footage. I saved it. I never deleted anything, and I think since coming back to YouTube back in 2016, I've always backed up the files. It was always a good idea just to have it, so it haunts me in the back of my head to possibly come back. And that's exactly what happened this year. This past May, I graduated, and upon, you know, continuing to write and continuing to revise certain narratives, I finally had the time to come back to filming, and not necessarily film, because I'm still setting up the new studio and all, but just to edit the footage, to finally play with it and to get it done. And that's why Operation Safari finally came to fruition. And for those of you who stuck around all this time, I can't thank you enough for supporting me in coming back. And I hope it's a good enough start, because this is what I'm hoping is my new beginning. And to me, I needed to prove to myself that I could still do something like this because it's been so long. Obviously, I'm not the judge of that. I can't make a verdict. It's really up to you all as the viewers, whether it is a step in the direction of what you'd like to see. Because I know that in the time that I've been gone, stop motion has only become really good as of late. And you know, I can't imagine the amount of work and effort that goes into some of these other animators on YouTube. But I'm hoping to continue filming, and I think I have Operation Safari to thank, and you all have Pixel to thank for getting me to film this movie. So the next subject that I'm going to try to articulate as best as I can, because I know it's a bit comprehensive, is the plans for the foreseeable long-term future of this channel. Basically, my future plans going forward, and these plans are probably not something you're going to see anytime soon. That's the best way I can put it, but this is the direction I'd like to take the channel in. Obviously, Operation Safari was a film that I needed to do in order to return to YouTube if I am to ever continue making featured brick films. And with Operation Safari, and in trying to make one good film, that's really the philosophy and ideology that I've been pursuing as of late, is to take these animated brick films one film at a time. I think back in the day when I was doing films like the Cody vs. Rex trilogy or 501st Rebellion, you know, there's always that to be continued crap that we'd put in at the end of the video. And the danger of doing that is, what if you just never continue the movie? What if you put that in the one you finish? You put a to be continued caption at the end of a film, and then you just never make the next film. It disappoints the audience, and I don't want to be doing that to anyone because it can be frustrating. I know how that feels growing up with these animators that I still idolize today. They could, you know, put out trailers and update videos and ads for the next big Star Wars film, and it just never comes to fruition. And granted, I understand why, but it is a very frequent way to let down the audience. And so I don't plan to use the to be continued caption anymore. I think it's important to just focus on telling one good story from start to end in that same movie, because that way you can enjoy the film on its own. And I'm so glad that I did that with not just Operation Safari, but Mutalist 10 back in the day. because I knew that the original idea that I had for a string of films, they would all be standalone, and you could just watch them as if they were non-canonical to one another. So that's what I'm hoping to do going forward with featured films. I do have a lot of ideas for featured films, and to my next subpoint of this subject for future plans is, as you can probably see before you, these are resources I'm going to be working with going forward. I don't plan on moving on to other LEGO genres. I think with the exception of LEGO World City Police way down the line, I'm going to be doing a lot of Star Wars stuff. I'm not switching over to World War II or zombies or anything like that. The plans that I have going forward are going to be heavily involved with Star Wars. And there's not too much I want to say about that right now, but what you see before you is hopefully what will come to fruition at some point, or stuff that I'd hopefully like to work with soon in getting back into filming. And in going back to filming, because I know how the whole procedure works, I'd like to make more story-driven movies. I think some people have said this in the comment section of Munilist 10 all those years ago, that, you know, the action, they liked it, but they want to see more of a narrative. And I don't think Munilist 10 really offered that, because that was really meant to be straightforward, simple-minded action. Operation Safari is almost like Munilist 10 but in reverse, because Commander Volz is a backline commander. And I can't say that Operation Safari is going to be the last action-labeled film, because I think going forward, most of the films that I have in mind, or the projects that I have in mind, will have a lot of action. It's just going to be like what Harrison Ford said about the Jack Ryan films. It's not necessarily an action movie, it's a movie with action in it. And I'm hoping the action will stay intact, but I'd like to pursue more story-driven films, because I think it'll make things a bit more interesting. There's also only so much you can do with action. There's only so many times you can set clones up against droids, and I think I've reached my limit in that with something like Capital Strike or Commander's Revenge or the classic battle, which I've filmed twice now, or I guess 3 times if you want to count the spiritual concept in Operation Safari. But I think that's basically it for future plans. I'm going to stick with the Star Wars genre. The movies will be a bit more story-driven, and I'm going to take it one movie at a time. Okay, so for the final part of this update video, I'm going to be talking about immediate plans. I think I've covered the big picture stuff of what I'd like to do, and all of that relates to things I haven't done yet. But I'd also like to talk about immediate plans, which I can make possible, because this is going to refer to stuff that I've already filmed. I mentioned that I have a backlog of content which included Operation Safari, but there was also various comedy shorts similar to Order 66 Gone Wrong and Cody Plays Complete Saga that I haven't released. So I'm hoping to get those comedy shorts out there. You guys can tell me what your thoughts are, if comedy is a direction you'd like to see more of, or if you'd prefer feature films. And the same goes for everything that I've talked about in terms of the big picture plans of going a more story-driven route instead of focusing on the action. You can tell me below what you think you'd like to see, and I appreciate all suggestions, truly. But for immediate plans, and for those who do want more action, I think this will please most of you. Putting the comedy shorts aside, I've got 2 feature films that I have already completed in terms of filming. I just haven't edited them. One of them is Cop 1 the Third, and the other one is Imperial 501st. It's going to be a really ambitious statement, but I intend to release both of these movies. I'm going to try to break down each one first. I'll get to Imperial 501st in a couple of minutes, because some people are would be very excited to hear that. But there's a small handful of you that I've noticed who would like to see or have taken interest in seeing the third Cop 1 film that I had previously talked about many years ago. The minifigures that you see before you is the World City Police figures that are in the film. And this was something that I shot right after Capital Strike. And I think it was poor timing, because I wanted to switch over to Cop 1, but I did it too fast. My mind was still into Star Wars, and I filmed it on my old camera, which was a 4:3 aspect ratio. So by the time I got the new camera and I filmed Munilist 10, all the footage for Cop 1 the Third was completely dated, and I didn't want to finish it, because not only was the editing very different from editing a Star Wars film, but also it felt old, and it felt like it would be a step down if I continued from where I went with Munalist 10. At this point, I don't care. I don't think the aspect ratio matters too much. It's going to come off as an old film in comparison to something like Operation Safari or Munalist 10. But so long as you understand that this is a film that I made in 2017 following Capitol Strike, I don't think it matters too much. And I know that most of you are here for the Star Wars content. These World City Police episodes, there's a smaller audience who is interested in this, and that's okay because I'm going to do it anyways. The Cop 1 series is more of a passion series for me. And so, I think not to return to the subject of future plans, but I would like to do more Cop 1 content going forward, like way down the line. But if I don't, then at the very least, this movie, which feels old, will feel at least consistent to the previous 2 episodes of Cop 1. So that's what I'm hoping to do with Cop 1. Okay, so with Cop 1 out of the way, I sort of saved this subject for last because I think most of you, given the majority of my content, would have looked forward to something like this. In the last update video that I did about 3 years ago, I remember suggesting that I would release the rough cut or like the director's cut of Imperial 501st for viewers upon request. And this was the series that would have continued the 501st Rebellion, but focused on Imperial clones that were reinstated in the Empire. Now, I don't have any plans on finishing this trilogy because I think, similar to Munalist 10, it was going to be like a series of 3 movies. I only shot the first one, and the other 2 were really just titles without actual plot. But I shot the first one, and that was what people seemed to be interested in possibly seeing. I never released it, and I feel really bad for having suggested the idea of a director's cut. The reason why I never want to do that is because I've seen it on other YouTubers who I idolize for stop motion. They'd end their tenure on YouTube with all these unfinished movies on their upload list. And it really sucks to see something like that, and I just didn't want that happening to my channel. If I were to somehow never return to YouTube, I'd at least want some sort of finished product as the final video. And right now, Operation Safari sort of stands as that for me, although that's more of a beginning thing. But in terms of releasing that unedited footage, I decided that, and it took a lot of thought too, because this was a 6,000 photo movie, it's just worth finishing it if I'm to release it. And so this is probably the more ambitious half of these immediate plans to release videos. I am going to finish Imperial 501st. It's not going to be the original Imperial 501st trilogy that I wanted to do, but this is going to be sort of a standalone movie that sort of takes place after Capitol Strike ends somewhere. The timing isn't too important. It does focus on the 501st. It does use the minifigures before you, and I don't know how long it's going to take to get this one done because the editing procedure is going to be very different. My friend Connor, who is now voicing Commander Volts for me, he is going to be editing this movie, and so the editing process is going to be very different from what I'm used to. He's using different programs, and so the special effects are going to look different compared to what you're used to seeing in something like Operation Safari or Munalist 10. But granted, this movie would be made to feel very different from the get-go. So while he is editing Imperial 501st, I will be editing Cop 1, the third. And it's my hope to get both of these films out very soon. Comedy shorts will be in between, and in trying to get all these projects done, that is when I'm hoping to continue filming the new stuff. So with those 3 subjects out of the way, I think that basically covers everything I wanted to with this update. I know that I've devoted this channel to brick films, but I'm also curious to hear everyone's thoughts about other miscellaneous content such as Lego reviews, be it sets or minifigures. I do have a couple plans for that, or other types of content that maybe aren't Lego related. How would you all feel about me adding that variety to this channel? I might do it anyways, but it would be interesting to just hear some feedback, just to see if there are audience members interested in that. Either way, I value and appreciate all feedback that I've been getting. It's been very respectful, and it's just so nice to see that after all these years, there are still all of you who have come out to watch Operation Safari. Like I've said before, thank you so much for watching, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to see more of the content that I have in mind. But until then, I'll see you all in the next video.